Hello survivors, hi family and friends, this is Roy from Bootsy Sweetheart's Guide to Life and Other Disappointing Experiences with a video on busting our stash of scraps. So this is a scrap buster, say that 20 times, video. Please stay tuned and see what I've done with some of these scraps. Before I begin, I just want to talk a little bit about my scraps. I have scraps mostly of fabrics, but I save everything. I'm sure you're very much like me, whether it's paper, craft material, beads, paper clips, whatever. We save everything, and we use everything. So this video is one I've been looking forward to doing, making something out of my scraps, and I'll have a whole series as we move along. I want to thank everybody for their patience. I've been off line for almost a month. We had some serious hard drive issues with the computer and some other mishaps with life in general. So please take my apology, a sincere apology, for not being as regular as I want to be. But I think we're back on track. This was really a fun project. This snippet strip, not a snippet roll, but a snippet strip, is really versatile and lots of fun. What I did was cut out squares and fuse them to the back of a foundation strip. And then we can decorate them. You can decorate them and embellish them any way you want and make them any size you want, really. The first thing that I did was cut some strips of fusible web. This I think is heat and bond, and I use that a lot. I cut 1.5 inch strips, and I cut a few extras just to put away as well. And this will be used to fuse the squares to the foundation fabric, which is an interfacing. I have scraps and scraps and scraps of every conceivable product, and this is a heavyweight kind of craft backing, craft foundation fabric. It's not woven, it doesn't stretch in any direction. Now, because I'm putting the squares on a point to point, they're going to be wider than 1.5 inches. And rather than do all the math, oh my goodness, from high school and college, I just decided, cut it 2 inches and let's see what happens. I wasn't going to go through Pythagoras and a plus square b whatever. So now I have this fusible bond, this heat and bond, and I'm putting that on a scrap of some fashion fabric. This happens to be one of the largest scraps. Usually I don't cut these up into small pieces because I can use them for pockets and other things. And then I trim it all up. It's easier to iron the fusible onto the fashion fabric rather than cut the fabric first, because I can use the interfacing, the heat and bond, as a guide to trim. So there's my 1.5 inch strip of fabric. I'll just clean it up a little bit on the edges and fuse this to the interfacing, in this case the foundation. I forget what it's called. Craft bond? I think it's Pellon Craft Bond. Now the next thing to do is to cut 1.5 inch squares. Now the strip is 1.5 inches, so I'm going to make a cutting guide. I would say don't do it this way unless you're really, really brave. You can cut yourself easily, but what I do is I cut into masking tape, in this case the low tack, and I just make wide, thick strips, and I mark the ruler where the 1.5-inch lines are, and that creates a little lip, a little edge, and I don't have to fuss with measuring. You know, it's getting a little bit more difficult to see the lines on the rulers as I've gotten older. You notice how well I did the pan and zoom? I'm getting better at that too. Little by little, practice makes perfect. So now I'm going to just straighten the edge of this strip so that I can get perfect squares, or as close to perfect squares as I can. You'll notice how the blue line of the tape matches the edge, and it'll always be square that way, or close to square. Now this isn't a garment or anything, so the measuring doesn't have to be quite so perfect. There. And I just cut as many squares as I can out of this strip. And I have other fabric strips. Actually, I have a couple of those clear containers that you get from strawberries and blueberries and other produce. And I have different size squares that I cut up just when I was looking to do some mundane tasks while I was watching television in the craft room, or maybe listening to Lizzie or somebody on YouTube. And you see I have all kinds of fabric squares, all different projects I've been working on. And the next step is really simply to glue these, fuse these to the foundation strip on point, so the diagonal is across, and you peel off the paper. And what's nice is the fusible bond is not so thick that it adds a lot of body to the shape. And following the instructions, getting your fingers out of the way, heat the fusible per direction. Yeah, this works out well. This little tool is good, but a lot of people complain they're getting burned easily because you can grab that whole steel shaft there is very, very, very hot. And they produced a guide. I had the older version and didn't have that red guide on it. And I tell you, it hasn't helped that much. I only caught it once, but you got to be careful. Actually, you know, they make the heat-sensitive gloves. I would actually consider using that for the hand. My right hand, my dominant hand, is so easy to get your thumb or forefinger on that steel. And you continue bonding the squares to the foundation strip until you fit as many as you can. I kept them at whole triangles, so when I came to the end, it just luckily happened to match. And that is totally by accident. I didn't have any waste here at all, because, you know, as a frugal crafter, even the little piece would have gone back to the collection of scraps. And I go back over the entire strip just to make sure that all the edges are bonded. And at this point, I'm just cutting out the triangle shapes that are created when you fuse the squares down. Continue doing that all the way around, and we'll wind up with what I call diamond snippet strip. Say that 2 or 3 times fast. And then you can save these, put them away as you need it, and pull them out. I'm going to be putting together some Bootsy Bling boxes. And a Bootsy Bling box is going to have a lot of the embellishments that I make, that I hand make, rather than all commercial embellishments. And some of these snippet strips, the diamond ones, will go into it. Now, Now the next part is to choose a stitch for the sewing machine that I'm going to stitch around the edges just to keep the fabric from unraveling, even more secure. The interfacing, the fusible bond will keep the fabric from raveling pretty well. But I took an overcast stitch. I love to sew. I love the sound of the machine. I love the whole process of sewing. So this gave me another reason to take out the special stitches on my old brother and sew around each diamond as best I can. Now it's not going to be perfect. I just kind of rushed on some of this, so it's not perfect, but it's good enough for what I would be using this for. You'll see at the end of the video, these strips can be made from paper, fabric. Of course, I'm a passionate fabric user, so rather than use paper, I used the leftover scraps that I had of fabric. But you can use the paper and decorate them any way you wish, and you can even sew through the paper, just like this. And you come to the end, and like George W. Tripon, a TV sewer in the 70s and 80s, used to say, "Trim as you sew." And there is a snippet strip. Now what I've done on this one, and you decorate it any way you wish, I'm putting buttons on each point where the points come together, and in the beginning and the end. Those of you who embroider know how satisfying it is to do handwork. And for me, sewing by hand is really a lot of fun. So relaxing. It puts you in that Zen spot where you just are so concentrating on what you're doing. You get into a rhythm. Despite my big gorilla hands, I do small things like this. I've yet to master the quilter's knot. As soon as I can do that, I'll be feeling more proficient. Embroidery is a lot of fun. If you haven't tried it, I would advise you to give it a try. It's difficult as you want to make it. It can be as simple as loops and circles and stitches, straight stitches, or you can get really involved. Well, here's a close-up of the snippet strip with the buttons attached. It's a lot of fun to do. This is probably going to be a part one of another video following, where I'll decorate these in other ways and add them to my collection of fabric embellishments. So as you see, this is a very versatile kind of embellishment, and I hope you can find uses for it. I love it. Give it a try. Thank you so much for viewing the video. This is my first in about a month. We've had a lot of interruptions and distractions. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, please give a thumbs up. Please share with somebody who might be interested. Stay tuned for other projects. And if you like this kind of thing and more, please subscribe. And be well, and bye for now.